Well, good afternoon, Maverick traders. It's the 30th of August. Joe with you here for a currency recap. Let's jump into the market action before I get going, guys. Just make sure you take responsibility for the outcome of these courses and all of our courses. Make sure you follow your own trading plan. I'm going to break down some of the news events that happened on the day. We're also going to take a look at the broad markets in general and break them down technically, including currency baskets, strongest, weakest, things of that nature. Also, if I've got a couple of pairs that look good when it comes to making a trade over the next day or so, we will definitely talk about it. So let's jump into it.
Disclaimer. This video was created for professional stock and option traders. Maverick Trading is a proprietary trading firm that employs professional traders around the world. Our traders trade firm capital and keep 70 to 80% of profits they generate. All trades and analysis in this video are for professional traders only. If you are interested in becoming a professional trader for Maverick, click the apply button in the video description. Let's break down what happened today.
Moving into the market analysis, you can see that the day was uneventful. Now, what I mean by that is after the bounce that we've seen over the last few days, we just didn't really get too much of a follow-through in light of the news of today. A lower ADP employment and lower GDP revision of 2.1, expected to be 2.4% on the U.S. side, is a great ease to inflationary worries. Now, we did have the summit last week where Powell himself came out and said, look, I'm going to stay ahead of this if I see inflation continue to stay hot. Before that, we were talking about maybe a soft landing, as we did see some employment numbers and some manufacturing numbers spike a little bit. But over the last subsequent events, including these two, we have seen a move to the south side, or a little bit of a regression, which is actually pretty good for inflation. Now, the markets did not take this overall as bullish. In fact, it started that way. We started up early in the morning, but then we just kind of bled off. So this overall move in the markets, well, I'll show you guys here in a minute, feels more of an oversold bounce that's just kind of exceeded some levels, more so than the markets re-gunning up and getting excited to actually put more money back into it. Now, that's very specific to the U.S. markets, but let's see how that carried over on the currency side. So you can see that the yen, a flight away from safety, which would make total sense when it comes to the confidence of maybe the U.S. market saying that, hey, look, we think that the inflation is going to stay. We don't see interest rates rising. A little bit of a drop in the dollar, but not much. In fact, you guys can see that nothing really moved. It wasn't an abandonment of risk on, so the Aussie and the New Zealand dollar really didn't do much. Just kind of moved sideways, but the overall charts don't look super strong. The euro and the pound, however, really did well today. And the yen was probably the biggest drop at 0.35%. But overall, folks, this really isn't that big of a deal when it comes to up or down, and nothing that I'm really going to make any drastic changes to, although it did change our currency power levels, and I'll get there in 1 second. Now, what did have a pretty good change today was crypto. Another pretty substantial drop in crypto. You can see everything across the board. The SPX, the VT, gold, oil, pretty much flat for the board, but crypto actually took a drop. And we knew this was coming because the last move we saw in crypto was very strong to the upside, but it was definitely an oversold bounce. Leading the way is Bitcoin Cash. It usually is the most volatile of the cryptos that we're following here, but overall, not a very good day for them in general. As we move over to our market outlook, you can see that I have to kind of do our top-down approach here at Maverick, 20 above the 20, above the 50, but the 20-50 slope is inverted. The 50 is below the 20, or I should say above it, this crisscross, although we did have a very strong candle yesterday, but a little bit of an anemic move today. It is definitely above a certain area, folks, and let's just jump into it while I have it here. So I'm going to give it a +1, but let's just jump into it because this level that I'm seeing right here, let me get my pin out. This level here is actually, if you guys were to snap a Fibonacci from here to here, very close to the 61.8. That deviation, the one standard deviation from the retracement. Now this, as some could interpret, is just a very aggressive bear rally before we roll over. Now, since it is above the moving averages, we do have a flattening 20, and we've got a, well, it's not quite there, but the 50 looks like it's still kind of sloping higher. You could make the argument that we are definitely above, which we are, a resistance area that we set about a month ago, like in July, right? End of June into July. So if this can sustain itself, pull back, and find support and move higher, then we are actually going to break this short-term downtrend, or I should say this bearish market that we've come across, and we could move higher. However, we're going to need more than that. In my opinion, folks, we're going to need a little bit more than just the chart here. We're going to need something fundamental. We're going to need an economy that's continuing to expand, a Fed that believes in a recovery. We're going to need a little bit more when it comes to some of the earnings that we've seen. Now, NVIDIA came out and had blockbuster numbers, and it didn't really get sold off into, but it sure as heck didn't move as high as we've seen in the past. So we're seeing some good numbers met with reluctancy, or I should say, not the exuberance to buy it that we've seen in the past. So unless we get a consumer, I should say an investor, to jump on board, then this just has to be treated as kind of this anomaly area of, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know. Do we go long or short? It's too early to go long, especially with this extension above the moving averages. But it's not weak enough to go short like it was with this beautiful engulfing candle that we saw just 4 or 5 days ago. So what are we left with? Well, we got to kind of gauge what's in front of us. We've got a bunch of earnings coming out, some economic numbers that are of note. One that I think I really am going to focus on is this China PMI. This is something that has slowly reared its head, and some of the weakness we've seen overseas in Europe and China as well has had a direct impact in the U.S. markets and into its currency. So I'm going to be paying attention to this Chinese manufacturing PMI. I'm sure I'm not going to stay up for it tonight, but it will be out before the bell rings tomorrow. Let's see if that has an effect on these markets. The other one is the PCE number. We know this is one that the U.S. Fed really focuses on. That's going to be out as well tomorrow. And then past that into the weekend, if I imagine these two are going to drive what's for the rest of the week, whatever the markets want to do. But if not, we do have the non-farm employment, which is always good, and the unemployment rate on the U.S. side. So past those numbers, we'll see. We'll see if these markets are tested. If this Chinese manufacturing comes in really weak, I want to see the impact that it has on the markets themselves. So that's kind of where I'm going to be sitting, folks, when it comes to the rest of the week. Let's get into the currency analysis, and then we'll break down the velocity score. So let's first start with the yen. Now the yen on a daily chart, I'm going to start with a daily chart. I might bop back and forth with a 4-hour chart. For those of you guys that aren't familiar with me, this is how I roll. I love technical analysis. This has looked super weak for a long time, and today is just adding to it with a little bit of an abandonment into out of defense. So I'd expect this to slide lower. Now we do have a really cool looking descending triangle pattern here, and I've been following this for quite some time. We've been below the SARS for quite a bit, but I do need to see it get a little weaker, so it's a little bit early. One thing that does concern me is I don't like to get into things when they're overextended. This is, you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days down. That's fine. That's how currencies roll. But if this indeed will start to slip when we get some sort of weakness overall, or a little bit of complacency, I should say, in risk on, then I would imagine this would continue to slide. So I'm going to focus on that. Let's take a look at this on the 4-hour, and you can see it's already broken these levels, and it's moving further low. So if you guys are in this already, the short side, it makes sense. This would be a currency that's definitely underperforming. Let's bounce across the next one here. Let's go into the US dollar. Go back out to the daily chart here, and you can see it's been holding on pretty good. The SAR absolutely flipped today. So is this the beginning of what could be some sort of retracement or consolidation? The answer is yes. Now, I'm not going to take the U.S. and move it any more bearish than we already are. I believe it's at a -2. We could actually make the argument if this holds here, we can move this to a -1 or even a 0. But this is a currency that I would probably just leave alone. And if you wanted to play something U.S., I'd focus a little bit more on the equities market themselves. So let's take a look at the franc. Franc's been holding in there. It's been sideways, and guess what, folks? It's staying sideways. I can get to the 4-hour on this, but there's really no reason because I don't see a lot of change. I mean, when you get 1, 2, 3 dojis with equal range highs and lows, there's really not much to go past that. Let's not overthink it. Here's the euro, and the euro and the pound had two really interesting moves. The euro I do like on the daily. It flipped the SAR. It's confirmed a really nice pivot point here, and it actually is pushing above resistance. So let me just go ahead and draw a couple of lines here. I would love to see this continue above this area. I do like this pivot point, the move that it's having on the daily chart. So play this a little bit slower. I wouldn't be super aggressive to the bull side, but this might be something that you might want to be definitely glass half full in. You'll see that I've moved that to the upside as well. The pound, I think Ankit was talking about this earlier. He said, hey, this looks like a little bit of a pivot point. In fact, this is his line that he drew, folks. I'm just using the same chart. And I do agree with it. It's consolidated, it's stayed at this area, and it's on its way back up. It'd be nice to see it come flip the SAR or actually do what the Euro's already kind of ahead in and moving above to break out for an opportunity to buy this to the upside. Now, what really hasn't done much, Canadian dollar, it's pretty flat. You can see it's well within this range. I'll briefly go through these here. And then our risk on. Our Aussie dollar and our New Zealand dollar, they look like they're just coming off of the bottom, more of a bear rally here. Kind of two things that I'm not really interested in. Here, let me go to the New Zealand dollars. We're looking at it. They're very, very similar. They usually always are. This is something that I'll just kind of let alone, just like I would the Canadian dollar and the franc. We're going to play relative strength and weakness. So I'm more into the euro and the pound against the dollar, I should say, and then maybe even the dollar itself for consolidation, or maybe even a move lower. It is counter trend, so I'd rather pay the European currencies to the upside against the US dollar, and I think those will be my choices for the week. So jumping back into our currency analysis, let's take a look at our momentum strength. I'm going to move these around, but I don't want you guys to get too involved with it because this is a velocity score from day to day. So overall, we had the yen get weak. I like that. I mean, we saw that break down, that descending triangle pattern. That's something I'd be actually looking to if you want to pair the yen against the euro or the pound, because take a look at this. I think the pound has confirmed that pivot point that we looked at, the euro as well, a little higher than the pound. Now, the New Zealand dollar and the Aussie dollar, I believe, have gone to a little bit of more of a bear rally. So I'm going to give them a little bit of a less score. But the big factor, all of the cryptocurrencies have exceeded that big move up yesterday and look to be hesitating at resistance, if not rolling over. So I'm going to put them back into the -1. And the reason being, folks, is just because it's just a bear rally. It was kind of a one and done, I feel, and we'll see where they go moving forward, depending on where these markets want to go. So what are the possible trades? Well, let's take a look at two. I'm just going to take a look at the yen compared to the pound and the yen compared to the euro. That's all I've got, basically, when it comes to what I'm interested in, at least for today. So let's just jump straight into it. Here's the pound yen, and I do love it. It's got a little bit more of a stronger graph than the pound itself, and it's about to flip a SAR. So this could be a call to action, right? Let me get my pen out here. Above this resistance area, maybe if it flips this SAR, we get a little bit of confirmation at this point, then we could, the SAR is going to go ahead and be placed right in this area. That might be confirmation to the upside. I'm totally fine with this. Pound yen to the upside. However, let's make sure that we keep things the same, and let's compare this to the euro yen and see which is the better of the two. Oh, it looks like, right, you know what? I'd actually take the euro yen. And the reason being is because I just like the fact it's already confirmed. This is the exact thing I was trying to draw on the pound, folks, and it looks like the euro's already done it. It's broken it above. It's flipped the SAR. It looks like it's already on its move. If I was to make a trade today, it would probably be the euro long against the yen on the daily chart. Now, that might change if you guys want to do something intraday, like a 4-hour, so on and so forth. But if you're looking for a trade, and remember, folks, we don't trade every single day, but this looks like a pretty feasible trade for at least today's class, right? All right, well, let's summarize. So we've got the Chinese manufacturing due out tonight. I'm not staying up for it, but I'm going to see what it did and what it carries over when it comes to U.S. markets and how it affects some of the currency, of course. And let's see if we see continued weakness in cryptos. It'd be interesting to see after that oversold bounce if we do continue to go down or if we're going to kind of hesitate sideways. Play relative strength and weakness. Make sure every day is not a day to trade. Understand that always happens. It just depends on what's out there. But I do like that euro-yen trade if you're looking for something. If we get a continuation of what we had today, but the markets are in a really weird area. So just make sure that you just let them play themselves out. Always proper position size and be mindful of your trading plan. Thanks for joining me, folks, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye, everybody.